Hi, welcome back to The Forgetful Scholar, and this week we're going to chat about books. Two books. So the first book is going to be a YA, paranormal fantasy, and then the second book, cozy mystery. So the first book is the Night World series, book 1, volume 1, book 1, Secret Vampire. Now this I was so worried about because nostalgia. I thought, I was like, oh, I remember it being one of my favorite books, and now I'm gonna read it as an adult and it's gonna suck. But you know what? It was 250 pages of just fun. I enjoyed the hell out of it. In fact, like, the first line. Let me read you the first line. It was on the first day of summer vacation that Poppy found out she was going to die. That's how it starts. Right off the bat. So, and this is, I think this came out around the 90s. So it's very YA. Like, again, they just kiss. And they're like soulmates. And it's very cute. Like, the romance part of it's super cute. Super wholesome. So, the main character is Poppy. She has a twin brother named Philip. And that's going to be important. She's in high school, junior year. So it's summer vacation, so next year is going to be senior year. She's super excited about it, and she's determined to ignore the pain in her side. In her, stomach, in her side. And her childhood best friend is James, who her twin brother Phil hates. Always hated, always felt something off about him, things like that. Now, it's such a great book, right? And it was so much fun. It was fast-paced. You get a lot of info about the night world and night people and the laws. And yes, James, who's a secret vampire, is explaining the laws to Poppy, and therefore he's explaining it to us. It didn't feel like a lore dump, probably because the dog scratched on the carpet. Probably because it felt like a conversation and, basic info she needed to know, which I like that too. Poppy wasn't an idiot, She might have made a dumb choice, in the middle of the book, but, it's okay, because she's like 17, like, yeah, sure, I could understand, like, her impulsiveness because of that, right? I could understand her impulsiveness because of her age, right? So this book, actually, I remember reading it when I was younger, and I was like, oh man, that sucks that she has incurable pancreatic cancer. She's so young, but that was kind of it, right? But like the adult in me, when I read it, I was so emotional about it. Probably because it was also, that time of the month. But like, I was like close to tears. Like, just the idea of your child, 17 years old, dying of cancer and there's nothing you can do about it, like, it like definitely affected me in my cold, dark heart. I was like, oh no, emotions. So that sucks. So she's known James, they've been best friends since they were 10. And he's always been a little weird, but she adores him, and he's James Dean Hot. And I was like, okay, that's kind of an older reference, but fine. Again, the vampire lore in this world is very different. So there are difference between born vampires and made vampires. Born vampires can have children and can choose when to stop aging. Made vampires cannot. They kind of stop when they're turned, and I believe they can't have children, things like that. And it's all these rules, and it's illegal to turn them without a permission, things like that, right? So James is so desperate to save Poppy because he loves her, and that's one of the main rules. You can't fall in love with a human. So he's kind of pretending, not to care about her and all that stuff, but he's so devastated that she's gonna die. Everybody is, obviously. Poppy is, and like reading her coming to grips with death and like at such a young age, and her personality is very vivacious, very feisty, very stubborn. So I liked how her personality didn't change really. There's only one time it changed, but she was still stubborn and feisty, but it just changed in the wrong direction or like focused at the wrong person because of reasons. So Poppy has been in love with James for like ever, right? And she thought, hey, senior year might be her, like the summer vacation before senior year might be her chance, get out of the friend zone, So it's really interesting. And I think, like, when I couldn't help reading it, right, I found it just for me struck me as almost like a family member coming out of the closet, and like, because the way Phil deals with this. So, okay, let me back up a little bit. Sorry, I'm all over the place. Let me back up a little bit. So, Poppy, like, okay, she agrees to be turned into a vampire, and to be turned, it takes a couple of sessions of, I drink your blood, you drink my blood, kind of a thing, right? And if she doesn't get enough, she kind of turns into like a zombie ghoul kind of a thing. So they get interrupted because Phil hates James, because his sixth sense is like, this guy's a predator, you know what I mean? Like, there's something wrong with him, right? And he convinces Poppy to not see James anymore because of a misunderstanding, right? And because Poppy's in the middle of transforming, she's not really thinking clearly. She's like feverish, and she's like half dead, half not. So she's not thinking clearly, so she kind of focuses her anger on James. It's well done, right? So James comes clean to Phil, and Phil is disgusted by vampires, right? And it's an interesting, for me as an adult reading it, I don't know if L.L. James, and that's, you know, who wrote this. I forgot to mention, you know, it's L.J. Smith, not L.L. James, but L.J. Smith is the author. I don't know if they intended for this to be, you know, the moral of the story, but it really kind of made me think of like a family member who comes out of the closet, and their close family member, you know, isn't supportive and is grossed out or whatever. And they come to grips with it because no matter what, they love their twin sister, and they learn to accept them, because that's kind of like what the storyline between Phil and Poppy is. Like, he's disgusted by vampires, but he loves Poppy, doesn't want her to die, and the more time he is around them and understands James and Poppy's new way of life, he accepts them, you know, because he loves his sister. You know, it was pretty touching that way. So, you know, so he comes clean with Phil so he could finish the transformation for Poppy and things like that. Now, I forgot that Ash, my favorite little vampire, makes an appearance, and he's the bad guy in this book, kind of. Like, he sees Poppy, he knows right away that she's an illegal turned vampire, right? So he convinces her to go to Las Vegas with him, and James is like running after them, because like Ash uses the truth as his weapon. So he tells her that, you know, if they found out what James did, they're going to kill him, and you're the proof. So we need to get you as far away from James as possible. Because in Ash's mind, he just wants to take James's girlfriend and date her himself. And when he's done with her, he's going to turn her into the elders to be killed. So he's not a good person in this at all. But he's very smart, very clever. And he figures out some things about Poppy and Phil that James didn't realize, right? Which I don't want to give it away, because I thought that was a fun little way to tie everything together and make it so Poppy and James don't have to be on the run for the rest of their mortal life, right? And I think it was a great first book in the series, because you kind of, through this tiny, fast-paced 242 pages or something, you meet Ash. You meet the two witch cousins that are going to be in the third book. You meet the elder vampire that's going to be in the book Soulmate. Like, you meet so many of them, and none of them take over. Ash was such a good sort of antagonist for such a young audience kind of book. He wasn't like this evil killing everybody, but he was really sneaky and stuff like that. But at the end, because that's the thing about Ash, like, that's why I like him, because at the end of this book, if you read it, he does something that's actually pretty helpful, because he realizes something that James doesn't, and then gives him a clue. You know what I mean? So he's not, I think he's more of a dark gray character than like evil, you know? Especially since in his book, I love it, you know, he has to kind of reckon with that, because he thinks humans are just food, because he was raised in a town that's completely controlled by vampires. The lore in this series is wonderful. I love it. 5 stars. I had so much fun. And I was so worried I was going to like it. So I'm so happy I like it. Okay. Now, the second book is I tried a new cozy mystery series, Close Knit. A Knitting Mystery by Maggie Sefton. I have no idea which number the book is in the series, but I'll put it below. So, reading the back of the synopsis, and there was a couple in the secondhand bookstore that I looked at, they all made it seem like Kelly, who is the main detective, who's an accountant and then solves crimes accidentally. I love those kind of stories. They aged, she just felt older in the synopsis, because I think in the actual book she seems to be around, 30 to 50 age range, Kelly, I liked her a lot. She seemed like a sweetheart, I will say this book had a slow beginning compared to the other book that's around the same length, but like, boom, you're in it. And you're in it the whole time. Boom, Poppy is diagnosed. Boom, Poppy's gonna die. Boom, Poppy has to transform. But is it enough? Did this misunderstanding, is it gonna make her into a ghoul? Boom, she's basically sort of kidnapped. Boom, she's almost gonna get killed by an elder. Boom, the end of the book, right? There's just like boom, 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 right? And this book was like, such a okay, the story starts. And I was like, all right, different pace. Okay. All right. And I've read a lot of cozy mysteries at this point. But this one was the slowest one. It was so slow. So, and also, there is a cast of characters in the book. It's like, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I probably won't need that. And then I started reading it and I had to flip back like, wait, who's who? Wait, who's this? And it's not because I started this. It's not the first book of the series. I started it all randomly because, again, cozy mysteries like this, and this one as well, is very episodic. So like, and they did a good job. Oh, this happened in this book. Okay, that happened in that book. Good. Okay, cool. I wasn't lost in that. But she has a lot of friends. And they're all couples, Cool. I couldn't tell you who was who. There's only one friend I could tell, like, who he was. His name is Pete. And because he had to go to Denver to go, because his grandfather had a massive heart attack. And his grandfather was raising his niece. So he goes to Denver. His niece, Cassie, who's 12. And that's the only reason I know who Pete is. And I could pick Pete out of, I think, 6 friends she has. Who his girlfriend is, I don't know. It's either Jennifer or Jalen. I'm not sure which one of the girls is his girlfriend. I don't think that was really great, that because of the side characters, her friends, I had to keep going back to the list of characters to figure out who was who. And again, I've read a lot of cozy mysteries at this point. I've read a lot of books. And when the secondary characters aren't distinct enough that you have to go back to the list of characters, that's not great. That's not great. You know what I mean? I thought maybe it would be a little bit more streamlined if they got rid of 2 or 3 of the friends, because it was a lot. And this is definitely more of a slice of life kind of story than an actual cozy mystery, because the mystery, the guy that gets killed doesn't even show up till page 50. Fine. We don't even hear about why he's gonna get killed till page like 50 to 60. Then he gets killed, and then the mystery sort of happens, but it's not a compelling mystery, and it doesn't seem the focus of it, right? Now, that being said, I liked Kelly. She was a sweetheart. The group of friends, their dialogue seemed really realistic, and it was flowing. It didn't seem wooden or anything like that. So that was great. Cassie is a sweetheart, but I feel like I know more about her than I do about the dead guy and possible motives for the dead guy. I was like, this is weird. And they focus a lot on the 12-year-old Cassie. And I was like, okay, maybe, because like she doesn't know who her father is. So I was like, okay, maybe the dead guy, Jared, the dead guy, maybe that's her father. Maybe she could be, maybe she's like a motivation for the murder, maybe? I was thinking that until page like around 90, and I was like, oh, this person killed them. Okay. And I was right. It wasn't, and this book is like 150 pages, and I was right. You know what I mean? So this book had a slow slow start. And it was nothing of consequence. I thought like maybe there'd be a clue in there somewhere. No. There was nothing of consequence. And I just got super confused by all her friends. And I was like, it's great that she has a lot of friends. That's awesome, you know? But like, there was only one thing about the cell phone being left in the yarn store. That was the only clue for the murder. You know what I mean? Like, that was the only thing tying back from the murder. And that was one page out of like 90. And I was like, oh. And then after, I was like, oh, it must be this person. There was no other clue. There was like one other clue around page 200. You know what I mean? So the mystery itself wasn't bad. It just was really overshadowed by everything else. And like at one point I was like, when is this story gonna start? You know? It was just such a slow story. And I really liked the part about the knitting and the yarn stuff because I'm fascinated by fabric arts because I have no talent for it. So I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But also I'm reading this more for mystery than that. So I will give it like the ambiance was super cute. Town sounds super cute. But like the mystery, I was just like, this is so weird. It almost felt like this book was setting up the next book because this book ends as a wildfire starts in their neighborhood. And I was like, I mean, that made no sense to me. I was like, what the fuck? Because like, honestly, from this book, it doesn't seem like her books really start snappy and fast, right? So I was like, that's super weird. Like that. So the whole book just felt like it was setting up the next in the series. Because like Cassie had nothing to do with this murder. Her billion of friends who all seemed the same, like they all kind of had the same personality, had nothing to do with this murder. The wildfire at the end, like the last page of the book, had nothing to do with this story. So it felt almost like this story didn't have its own time to shine in a way. And when the confrontation, which I like that the confrontation was on the page. I hate it when the confrontation is not on the page. So I really did like that, right? It was so anticlimactic because the murderer was like, yeah, I did it. What of it? Let me call my lawyer. Like, I was just like, I mean, okay, I love the personality of the killer. Like, good for you, I guess. That's different. That's a little bit of a different kind of reaction. But what? Like, that was such a boring kind of ending to the murder part. And then, like, wildfire. And I was like, well, what? I mean, what? That's how I felt when I ended this book. Wait, what? Like, wait, Cassie had nothing to do with this? Denver? Like, Pete going back and forth to Denver and because his grandpa had nothing to do with this. Steve, her boyfriend, was only in it a little bit, but, you know, that's fine. I was kind of hoping he would help her a little bit with the investigation, but he's not in it. She didn't do a lot of sleuthing. It was just, like, people telling her things, and then she was able to piece it together, which is fine. She's very smart, and she's very sweet. We didn't even get a lot of time with the cute Rottweiler dog, and I love Rottweilers. I was like, oh, we didn't even get a lot of time with that. It was just so oddly paced. I don't know what was going on. This really just felt like it was setting up later books in the series. And I was like, okay, I guess, but this book didn't seem like it was set up in any other book because it started off with them eating pizza for like 20 pages before they go play softball or baseball or something. And I was like, okay, maybe the murderer is going to be beaten to death. I mean, there's a sword on the, yeah, it looks like a sword really, not even a dagger, but like a sword on the cover. And by the way, I do like the cover art. I don't know. I like that. But I was like, okay, you know, maybe he's beaten to death instead of stabbed with a bat or something? No? Oh, okay. Why are we focusing on pizza? Like, I get it, they're good friends. Am I going to remember who any of them are? No, because are they all the same? Yes. The only thing that distinguished them was they had different names, and sometimes the names weren't that different. Like Jennifer and Jalen, I was like, there's too many J names. Who are you? Because you kind of just, there's no description, and like, come on, secondary characters are important. You know, you want your audience to know who they are, and this is for any genre, right? You don't want your audience to get confused by them. You want them to have a distinct personality and presence in your book. You just don't want them to overtake the main character, right? And like, even though Kelly was nice, she seemed a bit boring. And I'm not saying that because she does fabric arts, not at all. I think that was the most fascinating thing about her, to be honest. I was like, wow, I wish my fingers could do stuff like that. They're just not coordinated for it, you know? But all the characters were boring. Like, all of them. There's nothing, like, unique, and no one had, like, a flaw, you know? It was almost like a Norman Rockwell washed version of people. And I was like, I get it, it's a cozy. But even cozies, you know, people are flawed, you know? Or, like, something. This is a little too boring. Like, I had no idea who her friends were. So that's pretty disappointing, right? So that I gave a 2, just because, to be fair, the confrontation was on the page. The mystery wasn't bad. It just wasn't the main focus. The main focus was the 12-year-old Cassie, and that's fine. She seemed really sweet, but that's not the reason this book was this mislabeled as a cozy mystery? Like, that's not the point of the book. And I don't know who my dog is barking at. Probably the cat that likes to shake its butt in the window to make him go crazy. So it's really hard to calm down from this energy, okay? Okay. So I gave it a 2 because the main character was fine. Honestly, it probably has a 2 because I found the fabric art part really interesting. The confrontation was on the page, and the mystery wasn't too bad. It was a little boring, but it wasn't too bad. It's a 2 because it was a slow start. Couldn't remember who any of the secondary characters were. The clues were really obvious. And the murder confrontation was anticlimactic. So there we go. I don't want to, but it's time for me to get back to the real world. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye. Hi guys, welcome back to Forgetful Scholar, and this week we're going to chat about books. So I went to my thrift store, my secondhand bookstore, and I might have done a little shopping.